In this world of technology, things are ever changing, rearranging. You need someone to help you out. I know someone who can. Come and take a journey with me as we go through the land of technology. You'll never be alone. You'll be with Paul Amadeus Lane in the Tech Zone.
Welcome back to the Tech Zone. Paul Amadeus Lane. So happy you decided to stay with me. And don't forget, if you miss any portion of the show, you can always check out the podcast. And the best way to check out the different formats that we're on, go to paulamadeuslane.com. Click on shows. You'll see some other shows that I do. You'll see the Tech Zone. You'll find a way that you can connect and you can stay up to date on a lot of things. And if you missed our first segment, I really kind of talked about showing love out there and remembering those who lost their life in Christ Church, New Zealand. So you might want to check that out. Hopefully that's some food for thought for you. All right. I told you. How does cheese and tech go together? Trust me, it's going to go together. But for some of you who know me personally, I love me some food. I am a food connoisseur. As a matter of fact, I cover different food events as well, too. You might remember when I cover events like the barbecue festival, the hot sauce festival, and I'm sampling food. So I really love food. But one of my favorite foods out there is cheese. I love me some cheese. How many of us remember that old cartoon, Have Some Cheese, Rat? Remember that? But I love me some cheese. And when I found out that there is a piece of innovation out there that will allow us to make our own cheese, but not just any regular cheese, but cheese that is healthier, cheese that tastes better, cheese that you could do at home. I mean, are you getting excited like I am? I mean, I am so pumped right now. So I wanted to make sure that I shared this with you today. So check out my next guest and what his company is doing to make us make our own cheese, to help us make our own cheese. I mean, I said that wrong. I'm so excited. I'm using bad grammar this morning. But things that we can do to make our own cheese at home, and this awesome piece of innovation that's going to make it a reality. And I'm so happy right now. For some of you who know me, you know I'm into tech, you know I'm into cheese. My next guest is talking about how his innovation is really changing the game when it comes to tech and cheese. I have Glen Feder joining me. He is the founder and CEO of Fromaggio. What's going on, Glen? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. And one thing you know about us being here in California, Glen, is that we love cheese. So when I saw this, I was like, man, this is so cool. So Glen, tell us the story. You know, what made you want to marry tech with cheese, and how'd you come up with this great innovation?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And there is a beautiful story behind it. I actually, I've been living in France for the past 15 years and just moved back to the U.S., which is where I'm originally from. I'm a New Yorker, actually. I just moved back around a year and a half ago with my family. And so, naturally, having access to wonderful cheeses which really aren't very expensive, and just having access to such a variety of delicious cheeses, it just brought my love for cheese to a whole new level. I mean, in France, it's not really considered just like a luxury. Like in the US, it's more just a staple. Up until recently, the ham and cheese sandwich was the most popular sandwich in France, and that is what initially sparked my love of cheese. And then I came back to the US and I looked at what we were eating in the supermarkets, and I knew that health food was getting trendy, that people were foodies were emerging in the US. I knew that whole phenomenon, and even craft foods has emerged here in a big way, but somehow I felt like there was a lot of progress that needed to be made.
That is so cool. And you talked about some good subjects that I'm truly passionate about. Quality of food, when it comes to cheeses. I want to make sure that my cheese is as clean as possible. And just how the ham and cheese sandwich when I was growing up. That was the only cheese we put on. We either put Kraft cheese or I grew up the government cheese. So now we have more cheese out there and cheese connoisseur. I mean, I love it from brie to blue to Havarti, cheddar, and then there's so many different forms of cheddar out there. And here, coming back to the States out here, when you spent time in France, talk about just the culture difference of learning just how wonderful cheese is. Or did you know that before you left and went over there?
No, I had an experience much like you. I mean, I grew up on Kraft singles and, just a lot of processed stuff. For me, cheese was Cheese Whiz and Kraft singles. And, I had never really been exposed to, except for maybe at the very rare occasional dinner party, someone might bring out a little brie or something. But I had never really been exposed to all of the wonderful, delicious varieties of cheese that I found in France. And then, I went into a cheese shop in Paris, and just this smell just overwhelmed me. And I just, started tasting all sorts of varieties and really started to learn about the complexity of cheese when you speak with, French, Italians, or people from Holland, big kind of cheese countries. They they tell you the history behind the cheese. It's very much like wine. There's there's very deep and rich kind of history behind these products, and they consider it to be a part of their heritage, really. And so it was more than just food tasting. It was really a whole universe of learning about something completely new. It was very much a cultural experience.
And you talked about coming back here to the States. What made you leave France to come back here to the States? Not just any state, but a state like, see, I'm from California, from New York, but a state where the air is not that clean, the hills are not alive, and all these other things. What made you want to come back? Was it the love of bringing something like this to market and really, have this vision just grow?
Well, that was a big part of it. I mean, I saw that in the U.S. actually there is a transition that's happening. There's a kind of revolution, a kind of cheese revolution that's happening because people. I noticed that I read a statistic that actually those huge, processed cheese wheels of cheddar, they're not selling them anymore. They're actually they're in surplus in the U.S. There's a surplus of cheese in the U.S. And why is that? Is it because Americans are eating less cheese? The answer is no. They're actually eating more cheese than anyone else in the world per capita. What's happening is that Americans and many other countries as well, they're looking for better quality cheese, and they're getting tired of the processed stuff. I mean, once a really fresh, mozzarella or a brie or a camembert hits your palate, you just can't go back. You cannot go back to the processed stuff. And so that was the kind of changing paradigm that I saw happening in the U.S. And that was, one of the things that drew me back here.
And you were at CES 2019, and just being there, was this your first CES?
It was.
So talk about bringing the Fromaggio to Las Vegas, and just the look on people's faces when they were able to try this fresh cheese. But not only that, when they took a peek at this innovation and they were like, whoa, tell us about that experience.
It was incredible. I mean, I never expected that kind of reception. We had several people come by our booth. The best compliment I got was by, I believe, 2 or 3 attendees of CES came up to me and said, I've done the tour of almost the entire conference. As anyone who's watching knows, it's huge. There's around 200,000 people there. And your product is my favorite product. And I looked at them and I said, this is a first to market product. It's something new. It's not another drone. It's not another air purifier, even though I love those things. It's something new. But are you serious? We've got Samsung down the hall. We've got Philips, upstairs. You're telling me that Fromaggio is your favorite? They said, yes, it's my favorite product because it's new, it's innovative, it's just something, a lot of them just said, well, where were you my whole life, basically? I mean, I've been wanting to, have access to wonderful, fresh, healthy cheese, but, it just hasn't really been either in my budget or in my neighborhood. And, you changed that. That's what people were telling me. And that for me was the most overwhelming thing, even more than the journalists and the kind of media reception, which is also tremendous. And, we appreciate that as well.
You touched on a very good subject. Now, I've told the story before, but you probably haven't heard from me, so I'm gonna tell you the story. I remember it had to be maybe 4 years ago, and we were at CES, and it was one of the major press conferences they have there on Sunday. I think it was Trends in Innovation and Market Research. It was done by a couple of guys who were smarter than me. We looked over to the side because before it used to say CEA. That's what used to put on CES. So we looked over to the side, and we see the acronyms CTA. We're like, what in the world is this? That's CES. That's when they launched the name change from Consumer Electronics Association to Consumer Technology Association, just because of companies like you and what you're doing, how electronics and technology is a lot more than just the smartphone, just the TV and the computer. But companies like yours, Glen, helped CEA at the time to change your focus to see how technology is everywhere. And that's amazing and incredible of where we're at when it comes to innovation. And companies like yours are just leading the way. And that's amazing, Glen.
Thank you. And, it was also the first year that food tech was at CES. And so that, kind of meshes with that trend that you're talking about, the emergence of food and technology and really the two coming together. I think one of the beautiful things about food and technology is that technology enables it democratizes expertise in a sense. I mean, of course, you can never fully replace an expert cheesemaker or a beer maker or a bread maker, for example. But, the bread machine, the beer making machine, and now the cheese machine enables people who don't have a lot of knowledge about those products but love those products to produce a very high quality product within their own home. And that is, for me, extremely exciting.
I'm excited too. And you and I talked about before we started this segment was that I hate that I missed you guys were at Eureka Park over at the Sands. And then you guys were at Food Tech over at Treasure Island. And I was like, see, if you saw me in person, Glen, I'm a pretty big dude. So I love some food. I love to eat. So I would have been right at your booth, being like, hey, Glen, I'll go to the store and get some wine, and maybe we can have some cheese and wine here. We can really hook it up and have some fun. So I hate that I missed you, but I've heard a lot of great things about this innovation. So if you can walk us through, Glen, how does it work? How can we become cheesemakers at our home and get some of this fresh cheese that don't have the additives and the preservatives that we get in the store?
Basically, in order to make cheese, you have to go through a process. The first step is really to heat the milk. And you have to heat at very specific temperatures, which have to be held. And you have to sometimes heat at various intervals. You also have to mix. You have to mix the milk, and later on you have to mix the curd. You have to cut the curd. The curd is cut at different in different in a kind of grid form, but in different chunks depending on the type of cheese. After you do that, you have to drain the whey, which is a wonderful, healthy byproduct of cheese, which you should definitely not throw away. You can use it for lots of different things. And finally, with a hard cheese, you have to press. You have to press the cheese. Fromaggio can perform all of those processes. So it takes all of that messy cheese equipment, the cheese press and the harp for cutting, and the the molds. It takes it all and combines it into one sleek kitchen appliance that fits very neatly on your kitchen countertop. But for me, the most exciting part of Fromaggio is that it's linked with a mobile app. And that mobile app will not only have preset cheeses inside the app, which you can literally, with a couple clicks, send to your Fromaggio, but you can create your own cheese by changing all the variables of the process that I just went through. And therefore, it's going to create all sorts of innovative cheeses by changing, drainage points, temperature times, cutting, and so on. And, there are all sorts of ingredients that you can also add into your cheese. You can customize your cheese. You can make something, you can make a vegan cheese. You can make a kosher cheese. You can make, something that accords with your diet and with your tastes. And not only can you do that, and what I really love about the whole project is you can afterwards post that custom cheese in the app and share it. So someone in India can make a curry cheese, or in Japan can make a matcha cheese, or whatever, maybe a jalapeno cheese down in some of the South American countries, and afterwards send that to the app. I can see that and say, oh, look, it's a matcha cheese from Japan. I'm going to check that out and try it and send it to my machine.
I love it. And you took me back to my childhood, Glenn, when you talked about the whey, Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. And I actually did a whey cleanse before. It's really good for the body. And that brings up a very good point too. Because not only if you're vegan, kosher, but even ones who are lactose intolerant, they can probably make a lactose cheese that is good. It doesn't taste like paper.
Exactly. So all you have to do is, if you're lactose intolerant, there are certain types of lactose-free milk or low lactose milks that you can use. And so you're choosing your own ingredients. You don't want to know what some of these manufacturers are putting in their cheese. There was a story that came out a while ago that, Parmesan, they found wood pulp in Parmesan. We're eating wood pulp.
Wow.
This is, this has to end. There's all sorts of additives that people are putting in our food that we don't want to put in our body, and we have a right to know that, and we have a right to control that. So that's a big part of it.
What I like,
yeah.
What I like too, I didn't mean to cut you off, Glenn, was that how innovation is taking us back to where our great grandparents, how they made their own food healthy, and technology is really taking us back there, because we're very busy now. So it's great to have innovation like yours that can help us do them. Please, I didn't mean to cut you off, so please continue that thought that you were on.
No, I like that line too. Remind me, I'll tell you a little bit more about whey, because that's an interesting thing. But I like where you're going with the technology, and really getting back to the way our grandparents and great grandparents made food. I believe that there is a kind of backlash in the U.S. I'm sure of it, in fact, and not only in the U.S. The craft food movement, organic movement, all of these movements are attempts to try to get back in touch with our own ingredients, because really, like I said, growing up on, a lot of processed foods, our generation and the generation before and after us, they grew up on a lot of that stuff. And now technology, in this very ironic way, is bringing us back to nature, because it's the furthest thing from nature, a machine in some ways. But at the same time, it enables us to finally take natural ingredients and consume that, rather than something that's, processed in some giant vat stuffed with all sorts of additives and so on. So it really is an exciting time, I think, to be alive. This confluence, like we talked before, of food and tech is really enabling us to have our, cake and eat it too. So we have the technology, but at the same time, are able to get back to some of the more artisanal parts of our past. And that was something also that I discovered in France. When you buy bread, you go to the boulangerie, which is like the bakery. When you buy meat, you go to the charcuterie, which is the butcher, and everyone has their specialties, and it's a nation of artisans. And so that is something that I saw is starting to catch on in the U.S. as well.
Yeah, and I'm so glad too, because we are what we eat, and here in the U.S., I mean, we are not the healthiest people. I remember growing up, my mother and my aunt and uncles and grandparents, we were kind of overweight. They would call us healthy. But no, we weren't healthy. We were overweight, but they would say that in a nice way. But we really want to get healthy, and innovation like this is really helping us to do so. And one thing I like about it too is, one's for my segment of the population, the community, the disabled community. Me being confined to a wheelchair and a quadriplegic for over 26 years, I remember being in different therapy, occupational therapy, and they were teaching me how to cook again. This piece of innovation right here, imagine somebody who lost the ability to cook, and now what they can do is have this type of innovation that can basically do a lot of the legwork for them, and they can have this masterpiece of this beautiful cheese. And this is why I get excited about technology like this, Glenn, because this is like amazing. And I'm going to remind you about that whey conversation too, so I'm not going to forget about that. But before I ask you about that and get into that, one of the things that I really like to do here on the show is talk to companies who are just starting out, like yourself, because you're doing something amazing, a Kickstarter campaign. I love that, because when a company has a CEO or a founder like you who saw a need, who met that need and created this, you can see the passion in the product. So how can one support the company through the Kickstarter program?
Well, the easiest way is to, go to Fromaggio.com, Fromaggio.com, which will take you to the Kickstarter page and become a backer. The prices are, they're significantly lower than what it's going to retail for. And, if one doesn't have the money to actually, back it through a machine, you can just give a donation. And a lot of people do that because, people have different motivations. Some people just want to see this project come to life, because I believe it's a very disruptive product. It's going to change the way we consume one of the most ancient foods. And I think in some ways it could be a kind of like the, Nespresso of cheese, or, a kind of the equivalent of like the beer machine for beer once those started emerging. And that, I think is very important to support those kinds of, that kind of progress. So
I totally agree. And this revolution will be televised, because I love it. It's going to disrupt it. Just when it comes to ones empowering themselves to be creative and create this nice, clean piece of food that we can show off too. We can share in the app. We can upload it. I mean, Hey, bragging rights, man. I already got some ideas, some cheese that I'm going to make. I'm going to be creative with mine. I really am. But hey, before I let you go, let's have that whey conversation. So please tell me about whey.
Yeah, sure. So just one word about empowerment. I think that's really important, and, it's going to it's very fulfilling, really, when you make your own food rather than buy it. And it always just tastes so much better. And I can, promise whoever's listening that when you take that hot piece of mozzarella out of a Fromaggio, you're never going to go back to the supermarket. And you're going to be proud because you made it. Even though the machine helped you, you're the one who put in the ingredients and mixed your work and efforts into it and saved up to buy it. So it's your cheese. And I think that's not only a beautiful thing, but it's also a very delicious thing when you're empowered to do that. Now about whey, so whey is so interesting because you can have a gallon of milk and almost 80% of that can come out as whey, which is this wonderful byproduct. And so Fromaggio is built in a way in order to collect that wonderful kind of golden liquid. And what do you do with it? You don't put it down the drain. You can make a protein shake with it. This is, the whey is what the bodybuilders use to build the muscles. It's got tons of good stuff in it. And so you can make a protein drink with it, a shake with it. You can pour it into your garden to make plants. And you can also make a few different other types of cheeses with it. So you've got this very natural process of basically reusing this byproduct. And you can make, for example, one of the most famous cheeses you can make with it is ricotta. So you can make an entire cheese and then take that byproduct and make a whole other cheese.
I love it. You got us all hooked up, Glenn. I mean, we're just the cheesemaker now. I'm gonna give me a cheese hat, so I'm gonna be, that's what I'm gonna do. So, hey, Glenn, great catching up with you, and I'm so glad that we're able to highlight this piece of innovation, this Fromaggio. I think it's gonna be great, transformational, and I'm so glad we got a chance to chat with you before you guys blow up. So let's give the website out one more time on how they can back up this project through Kickstarter.
Yeah, so it's www.fromaggio.com. That'll take you straight to our Kickstarter page. And, we just hit the 150,000 mark, and we're just flying. We just released a new edition of a new upgrade of Fromaggio, which includes a copper pot, which is amazing for holding temperatures. It's what the real professional cheesemakers use. And that we just released that upgrade today. So it's exciting. The campaign's going to end in a couple weeks, so everyone should hop on and grab one, and that way they can say, hey, I was the first one to have the Fromaggio, and people aren't even going to believe it. They're going to say, what? You were the first one to have that machine? They're going to say, yep, I was one of the first ones to get it. So
I love it. Like the Rubik's Cube, right? I was the first one to have it. Walkman, first man to have it. Gummy bears, first guy to have one. So now the Fromaggio, we be the first guys to have Fromaggio now.
That's right.
All right. Well, great catching up with you, Glenn. Look forward to chatting up with you soon.
Same here. Thanks so much.
See, I told you it will all make sense. Food and tech. And so happy that Glen Feder joined me from Fromaggio. And I tell you, check out some of the images. See, if you're watching the interview instead of listening, but I know some of you are listening in your car. That's why you have to check out the podcast and the video when you get home. You can see all this in action. And Glenn, boy, he and I had a great conversation talking about curds and whey and all the wonderful cheeses out there. I'd love me some cheese, and I can't wait to get mine. When I get mine, I'm going to be on social media. I'm going to do a fresh cheese live, and it's going to be entertaining. I'm going to be dancing. I'm going to be telling jokes. It's going to be a fun show of me making me some cheese. Can't wait to get my hand on this awesome piece of innovation. All right, when we get back, I'm going to talk about my recent visit to CSUN. What is CSUN? You have to stay tuned to find out. We'll be back right after these messages.
In this world of technology, things are ever changing, rearranging. You need someone to help you out. I know someone who can. Come and take a journey with me as we go through the land of technology. You'll never be alone. You'll be with Paul Amadeus Lane in the tech zone.